The O'Briens go on vacation for the first time in 5 years. Odo dusts off his Nestor card. And Molly O'Brien likes the Petersons more than she likes her own parents. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the seventh rule with Cirroc Lofton.
All right. Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a quick, hilarious, and awesome review of Deep Space Nine Season 2, Episode 25, Tribunal, directed by, I don't know if you noticed who directed it.
Oh, who did direct this one?
I don't know. You may have worked with them before. Avery Brooks.
Let's see. The name sounds familiar. So Avery, this is his first directorial debut, I see.
I believe it is. I believe this is the very first Avery Brooks, so this is going to be an exciting one to talk about. Before we do, quick shout out. I feel like we're giving this lady a shout out every week, but she did mention something. Our resident doctor Anne Marie says a nice piece of trivia. She says this is the first episode that was released after The Next Generation ends. So The Next Generation did its final episode on May 23rd, 1994. This is the very first Deep Space Nine after Next Generation ended, meaning this is the first one in the era of two things. Number one, not being in the shadow of Next Generation. And number two, this 2-year window or 1-year window of Deep Space Nine going on its own without any other Star Trek shows. There's no Next Generation. There's no Voyager for a year or two. So this is the first one of you guys getting the training wheels off where they're like, all right, you're our guys.
Oh, this is the big boy moment where we have to stand on our own 2 feet, right?
Yep. And Mr. Brooks says, I got this. Let me direct this one then.
And he does direct this one. There were, interestingly, without me knowing who directed it, I took some notice of things. Specifically in the courtroom, there were a lot of things I felt like with angles, high angles and low angles, that kind of set the tone for, the authority that was being represented by these Cardassian High Court.
Right.
So there were a little things. I mean, I didn't jump out to me like, oh, this was the directing on this episode. It was really carried by this story, which was an O'Brien story.
Mm-hmm. I think you and I are both feeling kind of relaxed today. It seems like it's a very rainy day here in LA. We're both kind of low energy. And you know what? I got to be honest, starting next week is when the crazy episodes start with like Jem Hadar and this and that. Maybe this is going to be like a relaxed episode, like the big breath before the storm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel it. This is the calm before the storm, as you say.
Yeah. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. We'll just kind of hang out, talk about a good episode, sing Mr. Brooks's praise, and have fun, I think.
Yeah, this feels actually more like it feels like the Maquis, where it was like a 4-part episode, really, because they're still telling the story of them, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I feel like this is still a part of the Maquis episode.
And how cool is that? Because it really kind of opens up the first hints of what Deep Space Nine became, which is much more serialized. Because now we're having this common thing that's coming back. And we've got little drops of the Dominion here and there. We've got the Maquis that are sometimes now the main focus of the episode. Sometimes they're just kind of like a secondary thing like this one. To where it turned out it wasn't really the Maquis, but the Maquis were kind of being framed for it. It's getting pretty interesting on that front. I also thought it was really cool that, we always have like 2 or 3 people that are off on a planet or doing something, and it's cool to see like the relationships and who gets what kind of focus. And we definitely had one that we've never had before. I mean, this was maybe the most Keiko-centric episode, but we had like a little Keiko, Chief O'Brien, and Odo crew, like a 3-person crew there. Was really interesting.
Yeah. And I got a little glimpse of Keiko and how wonderful actress she is. And, obviously she goes on to do so much great work in Hollywood, but this is sort of the beginnings of her career, and we're seeing her as a young actress really knock it out the park. I
Mm.
thought that she delivered a really good scene when she was asking Sisko to be honest with her. What was the deal? Basically, he had to tell her that he's facing execution, right? And I liked the way she did that performance. She was really she reminded me of an angry wife. There's no boundaries. Like she walked right into the ops right there. It's like, I need to talk to you, right? She's like, so I felt a little bit. I felt her pain in this one. The other thing we got to see, which we didn't get to see too much of so far, was this Odo O'Brien kind of relationship.
Little dynamic there, yeah.
Yeah, they normally don't have too much interaction, and this was like he stood up and like stood up for O'Brien in this episode, which I thought showed character by Odo.
Speaking of which, I did kind of consider like how it did work out seamlessly that it was the Cardassians, which implicated the Maquis. There's a natural connection there. And right. Odo did work with the Cardassians previously, so that was a natural connection there. But what if, for example, it was the Romulans or the Klingons? Then all that falls apart. Then suddenly, who's the Nestor? Odo wouldn't be able to do it. They'd have to come up with a different way or reason to work around it, but it was one of those things where it's like, oh, it works out perfectly, because the Maquis are connected with the Cardassians. Deep Space Nine are connected with the Cardassians. Odo is formerly connected with the Cardassians. So it's one of those things that kind of, they found the right, kind of like the right key to unlock all these things that work together really well, I thought.
Yeah, and it allowed the story to kind of fit together really nicely. Mm-hmm. And we get a little bit of background. I like when Odo said, I was Nestor Asco because guys. Yeah. I'm a certified Nestor. And I like the way he was kind of standing up for himself and asserting himself into this episode. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that's really good about DS9 is there's a lot of strong characters that are not afraid to insert themselves in different moments. Kira does a great job of doing that. She's like,
right.
She comes right. Yeah.
And Julian's always trying to insert himself.
Yeah. And in other ways. Not like that. Not like that. No. I was thinking more along the lines. Kira and you see Odo, and even Quark has very strong personality, not afraid to insert himself right in the heart of the mix, right? Even at his own peril. I mean, I think Odo actually was risking his own freedom at some point in defense of O'Brien, right? Mm-hmm. He says one line was like, "I wish I had a molar. If I only had a molar."
Oh, no, wait. That was a really good line. Let me see. I think I wrote it down where he says, where, they said, I'll hold you in contempt or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, I regret not having a molar to give to you. Or, oh God.
No, I have it here too.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. I regret I have no teeth to offer the Bureau
of identification. Right. You got it.
Yeah. And I like that one. That was a great line.
And also, this was probably an episode that Avery targeted a while back to direct, because he probably said, I would guess after the first season, he said, hey, I want to direct an episode. And they probably said something to the effect of, well, it's probably pretty hard to be like the lead in an episode and direct it. And if you'll notice, Sisko was only in a few scenes. He wasn't non-existent. He was very important there, especially at the end. It was a really cool scene that we could talk about later. But it was a perfect episode for him to direct, because he's like, cool, Sisko, doesn't get like the lion's share of the lines. It's very clearly, Bashir, Odo, Keiko. So this is something he could direct and juggle that with acting at the same time. it definitely lends itself to that, I think.
It does lend itself, and I believe that this is going to start the trend of series regulars on the show directing this show. I recall Michael Dorn directing episodes. I remember Renee directing episodes. I don't know if Sid Dig directed. He may have. But
I feel like he did, but I can't say it for sure.
I can't say for sure either. But I just felt like there was this, our show did have a trend of a lot of people directing episodes, and Avery goes on to direct more episodes in the future. One of them, which becomes, one of the favorites of the series. So this is a glimpse into that. I like this actor who played Boone. I don't know. Really? Just because he reminded me of like the old West movies type actor. Huh. Like he looked like the old school, like he was in a Western or something.
What he reminded me of was my old Thai car mechanic, because not because of any of his mannerisms, but because he has the same name. His name is Boone, and it's spelled the same. And I was like, oh, it's my buddy Boone. He could fix any Honda in any way.
I don't know Boone.
Oh, you should.
No.
He's a good guy.
But there was a Daniel Boone, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Right. There's also a Boone's beverage.
The Boone, something Boone's.
And there's the Boone Docks.
Right, but the Daniel Boone is kind of the one that this guy reminded me of. Huh. And I think they took the name because the character was a little Daniel Boone-ish. I mean, even his outfit was, it looked like it was made out of animal skins and like more of a Native American type of outfit. Huh. So I felt the Daniel Boone type feel to him.
The guy that played his attorney, what was the character's name?
Another person that I'm glad you were going to highlight because I thought did job.
Well, while I look for him, did you notice that we had a NAM today, huh? We had a non-appearance mention, and it was Molly O'Brien. She gets her third official non-appearance mention in the second scene, I guess, when Chief O'Brien and Keiko are talking, and O'Brien's like, what about Molly? Is she going to be okay with the Petersons? And she's like, and Keiko says, Molly likes the Petersons more than she likes us. So that's why I wanted to mention that one in there. But she gets her non-appearance mention, man. That's pretty cool. Her third one. So
the conservator, it was the lawyer that you're asking about?
Kovat.
Which was actually played by Bernie Sanders, and I thought that was awesome that he did his acting debut on our show.
Yeah, that was sweet of him.
That was very sweet of him.
Can you do a Bernie Sanders impression?
No, I don't know. I know winning is better than losing.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I didn't lose too bad.
I thought you were going to say like Star Trek is a socialist utopia. We should be more like Star Trek.
That's a good one. That was good. That was good.
Anyway, I don't know the actor. I just saw I looked up his name. I don't recognize. It was like Fritz Weaver, I think it said.
I thought he did a great job of being like the prototype character for this like Cardassian ass kisser, essentially.
Right.
And he was great at it.
He really reminded me of another actor. And I can't remember who that actor is, but this actor's been in like a lot of things. He's like a bald dude with like kind of like a droopy face, and his voice really reminded me of that actor that's been in a lot of stuff, especially like sitcoms in the 80s and 90s. It's not him, but his voice especially just really reminded me of that guy. But I don't know anything.
I thought he did a great job. He was, he was a really incompetent lawyer, or a competent lawyer from the perspective of the Cardassians. I liked his last line, which is like, "I'm going to get killed for this."
Yeah, but they're like, "You won, dude. You actually won.
Yeah. Odo says you won.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what happened? He's like, you won. And then his line was, "They'll kill me," which was I thought was great because it just reminded me of like the kind of dilemmas Quark is always in, where he's always going to get killed because of some reason or the other. Either the guy he's helping, the guy he's hurting.
Another character, we're kind of pulling apart the characters, but this was one I wanted to highlight was we had our guy Gul Evek back again. I mean, we've had him in like 3, 4, 5 episodes now. He keeps popping up, and he doesn't get the notoriety that Gul Dukat gets for a variety of reasons. Number one, it's the character's just not as good, I don't think, as well created. And, he's more like the utility Cardassian. When they need a Cardassian guy to be doing something, but they don't want it to be Dukat because Dukat has a very
high ranking.
Yeah, and a very clear and defined storyline and relationship with Deep Space Nine. But when they need a random Cardassian officer, bring in Gul Evek. So that was cool. It's good to see him again.
Yeah, he came back for a little bit. We also got to see what Cardassian Prime looks like, which
beautiful.
I thought was pretty. It was the first time taking me to the surface for me, so I got to see a little bit of the city. And it was funny because when I was watching this episode, one of the things that came out to me or came to my mind was the movie Hunger Games. And I don't know if Hunger Games people like jacked certain elements of this episode or not, but the thing that I thought was Hunger Games like was this TV trial, this public trial, right? Like it had to be done for the purpose of television. So basically for the purpose of the mass audience.
It's a reality show, yeah.
It's a reality show, right? And then that's Hunger Games like, because a lot of the Hunger Games stuff happened publicly so that everybody would see it, right? Because it was part of a conditioning for the masses, right? So that was one aspect of it. The other aspect that I thought was interesting was they had it televised on the outsides of buildings, and people were watching it as on the outsides of these buildings. So I was thinking, okay, that's once again reminds me of these kinds of themes. So, there was a line where the judge says, Odo asked for a private conference so he can talk with the lawyer about the details of the case. And there was a line where the judge says, private conferences don't make good good television viewing or something.
Right. She kept mentioning that. That was like the theme that they kept going with was, that doesn't make good TV. People want to see the struggle. People want to see you giving in and accepting this. And
use your last breath to confess your guilt. We want to see your wife crying.
Right, they did.
Yeah, so all of those things, and I felt like a lot of it was done for the show of it, which is interesting to me because they're really ahead of the game on that aspect of it. They could have easily had just made it a trial. He's found guilty of this. We have to investigate. But they made it about it being a show of a trial to reinforce the Cardassian legal system and make people who are at the bottom level feel like there's just as much justice in the world for everybody. I think they mentioned even a regular Cardassian can walk the streets at night safely.
Yeah, he said something like even the poorest of Cardassians can why wouldn't poor people be safe too in your country? They're like, even the poor guys can be safe, man.
Yeah, even they can walk down the street without worrying. Yeah. And I was just thinking the points that the writers were making were kind of amazingly dead on, especially when you see how a lot of things today play out in public. And the show of it is almost bigger than being itself,
Mm-hmm. The court of public opinion kind of, yeah. Whereas in this case, they're kind of like creating that. They're saying, okay, everybody gather around as we reinforce how great our judicial system is and how great we are and how great everything is, and reinforce your confidence in us. Here, we're going to present the evidence and the case. This person is going to admit guilt and everybody's going to be happy and safe.
Yeah, and then they really touch on other aspects of the legal system with that when they talk about what you just said. This person is guilty, so they start off. You're basically guilty. If they catch you, if you've been arrested, you're guilty already.
You are guilty until proven guilty.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly. And that's how Black people feel all the time. So I could relate with that one. The other thing that was interesting was the Cardassian Miranda rights. I hope you got that. Did you write that down?
I didn't. I missed that one.
They were reading his rights to him.
Was it when they were stripping his clothes off? They really wanted to take his clothes off.
Yeah,
they were aggressive about that. I was
like, come on, man, let him leave his shirt on.
I was like, take it off, take it off.
Yeah, that's a little vulgar, the strip searching part.
But that was done previously in a Next Generation episode called Chain of Command, a two-parter. One of the best Star Trek two-part episodes ever. Really, really an amazing one, and where Captain Jellicoe gets introduced, and it is the Cardassians. Captain Jellicoe, played by Ronnie Cox, who's a fan favorite in a lot of ways. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but there is a precedent for that. We do have to go to our quick break, and then you'll tell us about the Miranda rights that I missed. And we'll be right back on The Seventh Rule with Ronnie Cox, Captain Jellicoe.
Captain Jellicoe.